Movies are made up of scenes and scenes are made up of shots. And shots are what tell the story of a film. And when you make a movie, it's characters. You can shoot that almost in an infinite amount of different perspectives. When we made our feature film Sway, we were bombarded with coverage, different ideas on how to shoot a scene. One character can be shot in a number of different ways, 2 characters can be shot in a lot more, and 3 just triples the amount of coverage that could be caught. But since we were working on an indie film on an indie timeline, we only had 1 week to shoot an 80-page feature, which in filmmaking terms, that is not a lot of time. We used David Fincher's principles of capturing on multiple cameras to be able to capture performance and going against a lot of his principles as well.
Especially if we're shooting this way, I would love to see the city more. So if we have to expose for outside a little bit more near the end, I think that's great.
Our movie is following one character going through a series of events that cause him to go through a lot of stress. So when our character is on their own, we typically shot them on handheld or on the gimbal. Now, the handheld shots we could get were pretty standard to handheld, but once the camera went on gimbal, we could shoot it a number of different ways. When he was strong and constructed, it would typically be a tracking shot that held the axes straight. But when stuff started going crazy, we put the camera in an FPV mode and let it sway throughout the scenes, feeling how disoriented he was, either when things were going wrong or when he didn't know what was going on. Now, that was shooting individuals of Emmanuel's character. The next sections were when he was on phone calls, which we would either shoot handheld on 2 cameras that would get dual coverage of the scene, and in some cases I would have the camera on a tripod in the distance using the ingenue zoom lenses to zoom into the shot and then doing a digital zoom to amplify that movement.
Frame and action.
So maybe we bring him in from here. Fuck you too. Why don't you count your blessings, see if you can get to 1.
He enters, like we're just finishing him closing, and he kind of like walks into a close-up or walks into a medium.
Yeah.
So comes in, sits, we're with him.
Yeah.
Right? So we shoot from the hip. So we shoot for like his seconds. So we look up to him when he enters. He comes, we pan with him, and then we come down, and he's now eye level with us. And that's how we get our coverage for this.
Cool.
And then if we want, we can also get just dead on, tight.
Yeah, start off on this one, and if we could hide another camera maybe in here.
This would be a definite, so either we get a B camera in here during it, or we get A to come into this.
Or you could be there off the top,
Yeah.
and I can do this one.
Okay, yeah, that would be good.
And out too.
Now, the next setup is the 2-character setup, which you see in most movies. Over the shoulder, wide. If you have 2 characters, this is the easiest way to bang through a scene and know that you got the story. Now here's how you can make it better. I would recommend going in and shooting singles of each character. This is going to give you a little bit more material in the edit and have a shot that makes it feel more important if the character has something deeper to say. It also just keeps the scene more interesting so you're not cutting between the 2 angles. Fincher uses this in The Social Network to highlight certain pieces of dialogue, then cutting back to the wider shot to go back to the flow of movement. Throughout Sway, in this dynamic dialogue scene, we shot many different ways, but one of the things that gave the editor a lot to work with is that I would set my camera on the ground, filming an additional shot from my gimbal pointed up at Emmanuel, just in case there was some scenes to use an extra angle. But if you're like, Zach, I have so much time on my shoot, here's the other one I would recommend, inserts. Inserts are a way to explain your movie in the fastest way possible. And I'd actually recommend getting an insert over getting a single of your actors. Inserts can be the characters looking over at a TV to show a new plot thing, or a prop that they're holding that explains a little bit about their character or something that they're trying to do. Inserts, also known as extreme close-ups, have meaning. The cinematic language has taught an audience that if something is a close-up or an insert, it means it's important to the story. This shot is a very strong tool on the toolkit if used correctly and can really amplify your story and save your budget. They are the cheapest shot to shoot that always looks beautiful. Now, what happens if you have 3 characters? We did a few setups. The first was one camera capturing a wide and another one panning between each actor on each take. 3 characters in a scene is the longest to shoot, especially if they all have dialogue. So the standard way of filming this is to get a coverage of each person, so a single of each person, and then maybe get a 2-shot that goes between the 2 characters. Wide shots on our shoot were just so time consuming, so unfortunately we had to axe a lot of them. If we could, I would have loved to grab more. And since we were shooting this from 2 cameras, one camera would capture a medium shot and the other one would capture a close-up, typically going on an 80 mil or tighter. But let's say you're in a pinch, or you're shooting guerrilla in a space that you don't have time in, or perhaps you're shooting your film and this is one of the last scenes of the film. You're running out of time at your location. Now, the standard way of shooting this scene would be the hardest and the longest. You could shoot your wide of all 3 actors and then get an insert of each actor and perhaps an over of each actor, assembling to around 7 to 8 shots in total, which is something we couldn't afford. This was our last day and the bulkiest scene, and if we had shot this the way it was supposed to be shot, we would have ran overtime on our last day. So instead, we went in and decided to shoot this on a gimbal, swiveling around the actors 2 times one way, 2 times the other, totaling into 4 takes of this scene. And it ended up being one of my favorite shot scenes. Making stuff in a oneer, while way more risky, it can save so much time. We ended up making our day, having more time for people to actually go into the next setup with a bit of brain power, and I was able to make it to my flight to Egypt right after shooting that.
This might be a kind of cool place to do a dolly zoom for for the wide at the beginning, off the top. Just like right here, kind of just pushing in and just stretch the background.
Okay.
And then do we maybe want to find another part in the scene where we do this background stretch again because we're already set up?
We could, so top of 13 and bottom of 13, so we could have a reverse dolly zoom on the way out.
But I don't recommend oneers and crazy swirling shots like that. But it was something where I'm like, yeah, this saved the day and made it interesting. And that was the secret sauce to how we shot a lot of these scenes. I floated my camera around on a gimbal when Chris was capturing the main source of coverage. And I'll talk more about that in another video, but having this in other camera, just getting additional footage, was really how we were able to speed up our process, getting primary coverage of one actor talking and then just kind of additional crazy shots to give flavor to the movie.
It doesn't matter how good of a cinematographer you are or how well you can shoot a scene. It matters, does it work well in the edit? And one of the best ways to piece together a video in the edit is by using music.
Anybody find my brother yet?
No, no one's got a single lead on him.
So what is this about?
It's about the booking.
You call Carter?
I did.
And what'd he say?
Doesn't matter. Rez ain't interested in bargaining.
Audio, I think, has one of the best music licensing subscriptions on the internet. And let me explain why. No matter what film you're working on, whether it's a short film, feature film, commercial, corporate, wedding video, or just film you're showing to your family, Audio has a one-size-fits-all subscription that covers all of those things. And you can use one of the best tools, which is their advanced AI search tool, which I've been playing around with and absolutely love. You find a song that you like, you can copy and paste it into their AI search tool, and it'll find music that sounds pretty dang close. The best thing about this is that you get a series of recommendations of songs that sound similar, and usually by the 3rd or 4th one, they're like exactly what you're looking for. And you can dial that in even more by using something called stems. Here's why you should be using them. It quite literally breaks your song down into each instrument. Then you can find the ones that you like. Personally, I'm a big bass synth guy, so I'll grab that from these tracks, plug it into my timeline, and it sounds exactly the way I want. Or you can download the entire song and kind of edit the music to what you are looking for. Anyway, if you want to up-level your movies, I highly recommend taking a look at Audio.
Sorry about that.
Is everything okay?
Nope. World's on fire and they need Bruce.
Well, if the world's on fire, please.
Where were we?
You know, I like to start with a little lightning round. Just get us warmed up, keep us loose and smooth. What do you think?
All right.
Okay, let's start basics. Name and age.
Sway Drayton. James Drayton. I go by Sway. I'm 37 years old.
Are you married?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
8 years.
Do you have any children?
Jason. Jay, who's 9.
Favorite sport?
Mine or his?
Yours.
Basketball. Don't tell my brother, though.
Your secret is safe with me. Do you believe in God?
Haven't met him.
Do you believe in karma?
I believe in irony. And no, I don't believe in taxes either.
If you met you, would you like you?
I'd understand me.
If you were given a book and the contents contained every conversation ever had about you, would you read it?
Yes.
Why?
I need the truth. Anything that could be destroyed by the truth should be.
Now, where the cameras were placed has some sort of importance. What you want to do is make sure you're shooting on the 180, which is a 180-degree angle around your characters, meaning whatever you shoot with one character, you shoot kind of on the other side of the frame for the opposite character. That way, it feels like they're looking at each other. If you shoot it with it going on the same side, it's going to look like they're looking in the same direction and not having a conversation with each other. Now, you can break the 180-degree rule, which we did in some dialogue scenes where we put the camera on the other side of the actors to sort of show some intensity, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but it can help enhance the story if you know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it properly, just go with standard coverage. Every filmmaker imaginable uses it. So once you get your standard coverage on the 180, what you want to do is try getting your specialty shots on the 180 as well. So what we did was, with having those 3 cameras on each actor, that gave us 6 shots to work within. If we knew the actors nailed their take and we just wanted a little bit of diversity, we left 1 camera shooting from the same angle on every single take, so we had consistency, but then all the other cameras would move. Now, I don't know if this is what should be recommended, but this is what we did, and it gave us the most diversity in post. Moving the camera around a lot, it's gonna feel good on set, but when you're in post-production, you kind of just want to be able to move the camera in the edit versus on set. It gives you a lot more flexibility and you can control the emotion. So just think about that before you go on set. But I would actually say, if we could reshoot this, I would just try and go for more coverage and less movement. And I think that would have done it a little bit better. Another way to build intensity within a scene is either breaking the 180 for certain lines or changing your 180 if the characters revisit. So for example, our scene started when the interview wasn't as intense, but then as the interview gets more intense, we change the camera's blocking to go against sun rather than with sun. So the vast majority of the opening of our film, we shoot going sun side in, and it's the light side of the characters. Things aren't as intense, so we see everything. But once the film gets more dark and gritty, what we did was we moved the camera to the other side of the characters and started putting more and more negative fill to create more shadow within the scene. And I think what it did was what it was supposed to do, which added dramatics. So we didn't do it with the color grade. Now, while the colorist in the film was incredible, and I'll talk more about that in another video, the intensity was really built through camera blocking and negative fill. Okay, a little cheat code that we did in the entire feature, which when you see it, you'll notice it. And I might ruin it right now, but we added basically a Ken Burn effect on almost every single shot. So a digital zoom in and a digital scale. And what this did was it added a certain intensity that's subliminal. It wasn't like an obnoxious, like, whoa! It was very subtle, very minimal. And I learned this from doing YouTube videos, that you can build intensity with a small digital scale-in that's unnoticeable to the untrained eye. What it does is it gives that Safdie brother film effect where it's like always camera pushing in. Now, we did have optical zoom in lenses on the film, so we had these like ingenue zoom lenses that were incredible. I would always shoot with them because we could get kind of 2 frames in one. I knew at the opening of a scene I'd want it wide, so we'd zoom all the way out, and then at the end we'd have these nice push-ins. But it's kind of not practical to always try and get a slow zoom every single time, and digital zooms are pretty awesome when it comes to making a film feel like you're pushing in. And you don't always have to optically push in if you're shooting like 4K or in our case 8K with some of the cameras.
Friends, last but not least, I've been working really hard on our course, the 4-Week Filmmaker, which you can take a look at on the cinematicacademy.ca. Doors are closing very soon, so if you want to enroll, you're going to be learning about how we shoot scene coverage, get an inside look at our film Sway, and learn how to shoot a scene. We just wrapped finishing shooting this lighting video, which I'm really excited to talk about, how to do stuff with one single light, so not overcomplicating the process, taking principles that we learned from the feature and compiling it into a simple, easy-to-use formula. One of my favorite ones I like to share is the lock method. One location, one object, one character, and one conflict. And this is how you're able to make movies similar to Sway, our feature, or something like Sleeping Giant, the short film that we shot in 45 minutes. So whether you're trying to make big films or small films, the best way to start is getting a camera in your hand and going from script to screen. If you want to do that, take a look at 4-Week Filmmaker.